welcome to the Badger Politic. I'm Scott Stearns.
My name's Paul Sickle. Welcome back.
Hey, how are you, Paul?
I think I feel dazed and confused.
How's that?
Well, first of all, there's a guy in the other room with a haircut that looks like he's out of that movie. But that's kind of like a cross between one of those characters in Javier Bardem from the No Country for Old Men. I mean, Rick Perry / Javier Bardem.
An amalgamation.
It's impressive hair, though. I mean, not that many guys. The guy's like the perfect age for that, so he's like probably 54, 55. Not that many guys have that much hair at that age that they can pull off.
You sound a little jealous.
What he's got. Maybe a little bit. I mean, as I examine my bald spot, which just seems to get bigger with the hat hair in this time of year.
You're losing more hair these days after you've had children?
It could be. I don't know, but I do know that I'm a little more careful, judicious with the use of shampoo.
Yeah. It's just,
or Governor Walker now, I'm trying to avoid repairing pipe in my kitchen because I would hate to have my hair scraped off when I bump my head.
Well, it's more. It's more how your hair's going to look when you're, on the tarmac walking up the stairs to your flight.
But you know what? That's why I always board the plane last.
Right, so you got a little bit of obstruction.
Sit in the back, buy the cheapest seat I can. Yep, that kind of thing. Usually, too, in the back, there's enough room in the overhead compartments so you can fit all your shit up there.
Yeah. You did see the video though of Trump walking up the steps, right? I mean,
no. You do know the story about Walker with how he went bald, supposedly.
He gave a story.
Yeah, repairing a kitchen sink,
and
it scratched his head.
No, that's not how that works.
You know what? What about the vaccine autism connection we're hearing from the Milwaukee health director? That's a little too local. We wanted to talk about Nunes memo, the memo.
There's so much to talk about, but there's the memo stuff. The Devin Nunes memo was declassified by Trump. Devin Nunes being the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, and he put together a memo detailing some aspects of the Russian investigation and how the dossier was or wasn't the source for the FISA warrants and yada yada. You made
that memo sound a whole lot better than it was when I read it.
It's just. Well, the thing is that it didn't say what the hype said it was, which was that
it was bigger than Watergate.
It was
bigger than Watergate, my friends.
His own memo said that it was George Papadopoulos who was the source,
right,
for the feds.
So let's take a step back here, and get our people identified. So Devin Nunes is the Republican chair of the Intelligence Committee.
Yes,
right. He's running from what I would think would be a safe seat in California, but apparently not. Apparently his Democratic challenger is like raising a shit ton of money off of this.
Good to hear.
That is good to hear. And then, but he's basically putting out a memo saying that the whole thing is like bullshit against Trump.
Well, that's what the hype was.
He's saying it's partisan bias, that Mueller is corrupt, a corrupt Democrat Party operative, even though he's a lifelong Republican.
Yes.
And that all the FBI, which is like, they're all Republicans, basically. And somehow or other they've had this terrible anti-Trump bias.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using their tax dollars to create a fishing expedition. And their evidence is that their boy Carter Page, who himself has bragged about his great connections to Russia, their guy Carter Page was getting surveilled off a FISA warrant that these corrupt leftist FBI'ers pushed through without proving that he's really not a nice, good American guy without pointing that out.
Right.
That was the gist of the memo.
That was.
And they're implying that the whole investigation comes out of that. The whole Russia, everything we're hearing about, the collusion with Russia, and the Trump campaign, which is, if not perfectly legally provable, certainly is obvious that there was at a certain level, like nod kind of level.
So it was vetted and declassified by the administration, and it was like 4 pages or something. I mean, we'd heard about this memo for weeks or months about how it was a smoking gun, about how the whole investigation was wrong and partisan, no collusion. I mean, this thing was going to sink.
But it admits that, and you brought in Papadopoulos for those. It admits that Papadopoulos is actually the source of the entire investigation.
It was actually the last line of the memo. It was almost like they kind of felt like they had to list it as some facts.
And that predates Papadopoulos' involvement, predates Carter Page by quite a bit. So the investigation was well underway.
Yes.
By the time, so it really, like, whether they surveil Carter Page or not doesn't really matter.
It's kind of irrelevant. Yeah.
Because Papadopoulos went out drinking with the Australian diplomat.
Got a little sauce.
Spilled the whole beans. Yeah. Said that Trump knows that there's dirt on Hillary. This is back in June of 16. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden the first, pieces started dropping, and then the Australians realized it wasn't just a drunken rant and informed the U.S.
Yeah.
The State Department or whatever that you might want to look
through
into.
Channels said, hey, this is something that's, worthwhile.
I think they went through official channels. I mean, they said, look, now, one of our diplomats brought this to our attention. We just thought it was a bunch of drunken hullabaloo, but apparently there might be something to it now that we're starting to see the pieces come out. Right. And then the investigation was open then in late July, I believe.
Right.
About almost 2 months after the big night out on the town in London.
Yeah.
Which I've done before. London is a lot of fun to get drunk in. It was better 20 years ago, I'm sure, when it was less expensive. So.
Well, yeah.
Just at the pubs, though, you can have a really good time. You don't have to go out to anything special. And then they have pubs that are open later now these days. So
yeah, it's not like the old timey days where we close at 11 or something.
Yeah, or you could just go take your book, if you're a student or a student of life or whatever, take your book, and usually there I really drank at happy hour. You try to get your first beer in before the sundown, and the sundown's really early there.
You spent a semester there in college?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So,
but you weren't a U.S. Diplomat at the time, or
no?
Hanging out with diplomats.
It was during the Clinton impeachment trial.
Okay.
That actually happened. He got acquitted by the Senate while I was out there.
Oh, all right.
And I certainly got drunk with people all the time who would find out I was American, and they would be, because sometimes they would think I was Canadian. Well, yeah, we're from Wisconsin, eh?
Yeah.
But anyway, that they would say, well, you just sound more intelligent than most Americans.
But to your credit.
Right. Anyway, so that would be what they would say if I got a little irritated.
At least to your face.
Right. I wasn't even one of those people sewing a maple leaf on the back of my backpack so I'd be more accepted.
Well, this is pre 9/11, and
people still did that back then.
Iraq War.
People totally did that back then.
Yeah.
All the Canadians were so eager to differentiate themselves from Americans, because I went to all the student tourist traps. In Europe back then. So, that was big then. I can only imagine what it's like today.
Who knows?
This was during the Kosovo thing, which was actually pretty controversial.
Oh, yeah, sure. So we've got the Nunes memo. It's been out there now for a few weeks, but then Adam Schiff is the minority, is the ranking member,
right? Little Adam
on the Intelligence Committee.
Trump calls him Little Adam, right?
Yeah, you always got to have a name for everybody.
Who's desperate to run for higher office.
Apparently so.
This is also according to Trump's latest tweets.
Yeah. And so he, along with the Democratic members, assembled kind of a memo in response to
rebuttal.
this, and to kind of knock down several of the claims that were thrust out in this thing.
Well, and one of the things I want to point out that they did, unlike Nunes' memo, when you read it, reads really kind of poorly worded talking points.
Yeah,
and
there's kind of like a fundraising letter almost.
Yeah, right? It does. It's the kind of thing they could have just stuck in a fundraising letter. But I think it adds a little sauce when they say, "Oh, it's declassified," So then it probably consolidates the base. But yeah, so Nunes' thing is a hot mess, though. It's one of the worst. I can't believe people in high governmental positions wrote this fucking thing. I mean, really, like, it was just so bad, and it goes nowhere. So anyway, yeah, as you said, Schiff decided to try to switch the narrative, or decided to rebut the thing, and apparently he wrote a much more clear memo.
Yeah, so Adam Schiff, he's another representative from California. He's, again, ranking member on that committee. They had an initial vote when they were voting to release the memo, the Republican memo, the Nunes memo. The Republicans shot down the idea that they would also release the Democratic memo. However, because this thing was such a dud, once the Nunes memo came out, the response was so lackluster. I think even amongst many Republicans, where it was like, really, that's all it is, huh? There's really no smoking gun. This has as much as Trump through Twitter tried to say like this completely debunks collusion and this and that, which it didn't do at all.
Shows partisanship in the investigation, which it really doesn't do. It points to maybe a couple embarrassing things. So a couple people, but that's even
it went nowhere. And so then like guys like Trey Gowdy, like one of the most partisan Republicans,
one of Nunes' buds,
and who for years spent how many hours and times and resources going after Clinton on Benghazi.
Excuse me, I have to interrupt you. Benghazi.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
what about Benghazi?
Even he was like, this does nothing to
Trey Gowdy, who was the source of all your angry uncles, all caps, 5-paragraph emails to the family about why you don't see how horrible Benghazi Obama is. Benghazi.
He admitted as much, is that this is nothing to counteract the reason for the Russian investigation, and that it should continue, and that we should release the Democratic memo too. So he, along with others, like we're supportive of releasing the Democratic memo. So subsequently, the committee votes to declassify the Democratic memo as well. So that goes then to Trump and the administration to decide or not to release the Schiff memo. Well, lo and behold, not surprisingly, the other day they come out and they say, Trump says, no, we're not going to, there's too much sensitive information, national security, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to release the Schiff memo.
And there's probably not enough information about Benghazi.
Maybe that's what it is.
Just kidding. But I will say, to his slight credit, I think Speaker Ryan, even when they did release the Nunes memo, did say that he thought they should probably release the Democrat memo.
Well, a lot of them did. But,
probably because they knew the Nunes had almost no muster.
Or maybe they just knew that, like, they could try to look good by saying, like, yes, let's release the Democratic memo, knowing full well that Trump's never going to release it.
Right. So he gives them cover.
Because he's not going to release anything that will counteract his own narrative.
So I was thinking, like, gaming this out. Why in the hell would these Republicans release the Nunes memo in the first place? It's so bad. It goes nowhere.
Yeah.
What does it do for them? And
nothing.
Except why did they do it then? I mean, it just doesn't go anywhere.
It's red meat.
Red meat, so it's about their base. Getting their base charged up. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then the next question is, why would they or would they not? Why would they first release the Democratic memo, and why wouldn't they release the Democratic memo?
Well, why?
Because they get to decide. They control all the both houses of the legislative branch.
They can vote. They can vote to release it, but if the administration doesn't choose to declassify it, it's a non-issue.
I think the Congress can try to sort of override or put more pressure. They keep saying
they can put more pressure on it, but it's not going. The administration.
Okay.
The Department of Justice is under the administration, so therefore, if they say no go,
right,
then they can go back to the table and say like, okay, we're going to pull back these things and or re-edit it.
Right.
In such a fashion that it will satisfy whatever criteria.
Right.
But it's kind of like,
that's what I would do. If I were the Republicans, I would release it with it redacted and maybe even try to take out some of the juicier parts that make it.
But they're not even saying they'll redact it. They're just saying they won't release it. Period.
Yeah, I would think that makes them look very unfair. On the other hand, I thought about this, right? That it makes them look very unfair. So that pisses off probably Democrats. That look how corrupt they are. They release their own piece of shit memo to be propaganda, say it's bigger than Watergate. Meanwhile, there's a memo that actually refutes it pretty clearly and points out that there really is a problem with this. So by not releasing it, they're showing how partisan they are.
Yes.
So that'll piss off. That should piss off Democrats to or not even Democrats. I'm thinking like my liberal friends who won't call themselves Democrats. They won't just answer a poll and say, "Oh yeah, I'll vote for whoever's running as a Democrat for Congress." But then they hear about this, they see how stupid this whole thing is, and they're like, "Fuck this! I'll vote for anybody against the Trump people, so I'll vote all Democrat."
Yeah, because they're a bunch of hypocrites.
And we're seeing that now in the generic ballot. The Democrats are finally recovering back toward like 48%, even though Trump's popularity continues to edge a little higher, but it's still about 41%. So he's just still consolidating the base.
Yeah, it is consolidating the base. I don't see it going dramatically higher because I just think
he's at about 53% disapproval, which is one of his best marks of his presidency.
The 53% disapproval.
Yeah, he's at 41 approve, 53 disapprove, which is about the best he's ever been.
And I don't see how he gets much beyond that because the disapproval seems like such a hard number. It's not like there's soft. Right. There's not a lot of soft disapproval.
It did. So this memo, I think it makes sense what they're doing. Then put it out. It's good to keep your right-wing crazies, at least your fundraising base, fired up on the right.
Yeah.
Put down the Democrat. Don't let the Democrat memo out, even though it pisses off some. It'll probably help the Democrats with fundraising.
Yeah.
And piss off people. Because my thinking was, well, they redact some stuff. There's a good chance that the follow-up memo wouldn't be all that hot either.
Well, it would last. It would last for a news cycle, and then it'd be gone because something else. Trump would send out some other tweet in the meantime, probably to coincide with the release.
Well, and especially if they were to redact it well enough.
Yeah, and then nobody pays attention, and you move on.
But that said, actually, I do think it would make news for more than a cycle.
Depends
because it drags it out.
Well,
I mean, my original issue is why would they even have done the Nunes thing in the first place? Because this whole Russia thing is it was more about the State of the Union. It was about Trump's tax cuts. He was finally getting somewhere in the public opinion. I mean, among conservatives.
I think they wanted to release it because Trump can tweet all he wants about.
Suddenly they brought Russia back into the fray, though.
But it's always been there. It's just that I think they feel like they needed some kind of hard evidence to push back against it.
But they didn't get any hard evidence.
Of course they didn't, but they can say that they have hard evidence. They can say
hey, to their
look,
face.
There's a piece of paper, and they can take pictures of that piece of paper and show it in a frame.
I guarantee it helps with fundraising.
Well, of course, it helps with fundraising. But
all your angry uncles with their all caps will give what's left of their pension fund to the RNC now.
But regardless, how many people that out there that are that are pro-Trumpers or at least going along for the ride? How many people actually read this memo? Very few, probably.
No, they just heard, this thing's, it's worse than Watergate. It shows how corrupt Mueller is.
Exactly.
Right,
it was
Benghazi.
According to Sean Hannity, I think it's the worst political scandal in American history.
What about Benghazi, though, Sean Hannity?
Well, that's apparently now that's the second worst.
Right.
So, this is where we're at. They just need a piece of paper to point to say, look, there's a memo from the government that says, this is a thing that's bad, and
they needed something
going
that they
after our president.
Right. And so the Democrats
they needed a prop.
So even though they're so transparently partisan by not doing the Democratic memo, they at least keep parts of the Democratic memo from being, because it's longer too. It'd probably take 2 or 3 days to get it's sifted through and all the headlines out.
Mm-hmm.
I did think there was a chance the Democratic memo, though, may not go that far.
Yeah.
And they might get 3 or 4 days of bad headlines, and then the whole story just kind of dies out.
Yeah.
Whereas now, the investigation will go on. It'll continue to be the trickle.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, though, that's in the Trump's best interest. It's quite possible that he and his people, at least at the top level, to preserve the administration, followed the letter of the law.
Yeah.
Or even if they did a good enough job of erasing their tracks, there may be a lot of guys going down along the way. Papadopoulos, Paul Manafort, I mean, even his son-in-law, for all we know.
You're right.
I mean, there could be his daughter, Ivanka, who knows? There could be a lot of casualties, but the Trump administration will likely be preserved. And meanwhile, they can say, oh, look, they're persecuting us. They're persecuting our family.
Yeah.
And fundraise and base build off that whole thing.
Yeah, for no reason, because we are not guilty. And
A, let's hope that we don't make the entire election about this Russia thing.
no.
But B, let's not let them off the hook.
Of course.
On anything.
There needs to be accountability, but we've talked about it before, and I mean, we need to make sure that when it comes to election time, it can't just be about the wrongdoing of the other side. You have to give people a reason to vote for something. And it still has to come down to issues. If the Democrats and people that are opposed to Trump are going to be successful, it has to come down to doing things a better way.
Yep.
So,
yeah. So yeah, it was 40. It was as low as 46-41. The generic ballot is now back to 47-40. And that's the one reason I think these numbers are significant is because these are averages of many polls.
right.
So it shows me that the Democratic base is starting to consolidate.
So there's in other electoral news.
Reconsolidate.
We've got news out of Pennsylvania. There was a court case about gerrymandering in Pennsylvania, and the Pennsylvania courts ruled that they need to redraw the districts based on the gerrymandering being illegal. So the Republicans appealed to the Supreme Court,
saying, "Please don't make us re-gerrymander it."
It's an election year. We don't have the time. We can't do it. And the Supreme Court rejected it. Said no, we're not dealing with this.
Right.
So basically, it's
Alito wrote the thing.
Yeah.
Apparently, their appeal was highly unorthodox.
Yeah.
And that there was very low legal precedent for it. That even Alito was just like, "Fuck this."
And Pennsylvania is another one that, I mean, Pennsylvania traditionally a Democratic state, but in more recent times
voted for Trump by the same margin we had in Wisconsin on a
Yeah.
percentage basis, a higher margin in raw votes, about 45,000.
Historically a Democratic state, but it's been a swing state. It's definitely not been a solid Democratic state,
Right.
I wouldn't say. But the GOP drawn map that was passed in 2011, it gave them a 13-5 advantage in 3 straight elections in the state with more registered Democrats than Republicans.
Including the year Obama won by the state by like 5 percentage
So
points, right?
obviously,
Yeah. And the previous 14th cycle, a Democrat won the governor race too.
right.
So
right now they have a Democratic governor, and so now they've been tasked with
John Wolf, right.
to redraw the map. So this past week, the Republicans magically came up with a new map,
which is just as bad.
In very short order. So I don't know if it's as bad. I mean, it sounds like it may be it's probably a step in the right direction, but the problem is
maybe it'll be 12-6 now.
It could be.
I doubt it. They probably did everything they could to keep the 13-5.
Well, I mean, the people that came up with it were the House Speaker Mike Tarzi and Senate Pro Tem Joe Scarnetti. And so no Democratic collaborations. It's basically the two leaders of the GOP in the state have come up with this map and now sent it to the Democratic governor, and it's up to him whether or not to accept it or reject it.
Veto it.
If he rejects it, basically it defers back to the court. The court will then redraw
Which is
a
how
new
it
map.
often is when there's a split legislature. That's usually how it goes.
We've seen this in Wisconsin
all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's most which is actually a pretty impartial way of redrawing districts.
Yeah.
I mean, they might, because there's 2 houses controlled by Republicans, give a slight nod to the Republicans, but not much.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty common. I would say, honestly, at this point, just given that we've seen some fairly close Republican-leaning districts going Democrat in this special elections, notwithstanding Alabama, which is further out. Then again, that guy was accused of child molestation.
A little more extreme example.
But yeah, I think that the danger here is that you're actually giving them another crack at doing it. And we're in year 8 of this redistrict.
Right.
And by gerrymanders tend to lose some of their juice near the end of the cycle. The 10-year cycle is after every. So this is the second to last election under this census. So by now, the demographic changes have happened in a lot of, especially when you start looking at a state legislative level, maybe not so much the congressional level, although it's probably starting to seep in at the congressional level, where you'll have enough demographic changes that what was a safe Republican seat, in 2010 may not be right.
Look at Paul Ryan's district. I mean,
that could be a good example, right?
Randy Bryce is definitely going to be competitive for that.
He
may not win it, but he's definitely going to compete for it.
Right. I think that's largely just because Ryan, never was that safe of a seat, but it probably is a little less safe just due to demographic changes in that region, the southeast.
Well, Ryan's profile going up, and people realize that he's not all that,
and it's also the part of the state which is it's probably the second most diverse congressional district in the state after the fourth. Is the first.
When you look at income distribution, everything like that.
And race too. Well, more so than even the second, which is very Democratic leaning, because Racine and Kenosha and Beloit.
Yeah.
Beloit's actually not in it, but just the Janesville area. Mm-hmm. Even Walworth County. Guy running for governor, Malin Mitchell's from Walworth County.
Yeah.
So is Scott Walker. So there you go. Very diverse. And all.
So in terms of Pennsylvania, the Democratic governor is Tom Wolf. He has until Thursday to decide what he wants to do about the maps.
He's got to be.
If he doesn't support it, the court has indicated it will develop its own map.
And if he does, we'll be talking about it very angrily.
And whatever maps are developed will be in effect for the May elections this year. So
there you go.
That could,
which includes his reelection.
And that
which doesn't really matter.
That would affect the congressional elections come this fall and could potentially swing the House. So.
Something to revisit. This might be a little too nerdy, but it just makes me think of where we are with Trump now, because that whole Canadians sewing on the flag, there certainly was that kind of anti-American sentiment, even with the Kosovo War and Bill Clinton being impeached in the late 90s and around the battle in Seattle and all that. I could only imagine it got to a fever pitch after the Iraq War. But now that we have President Trump following, Obama, I'm sure, moderated that. I just wonder how crazy
you wonder how many Americans are posing as Canadians when they're studying abroad.
They're probably hoping they'll get on a plane and they'll let them go to Montreal and just stay there.
Perhaps. On that note, all right, listeners.
I might do that. No, I'm just kidding.
Thanks again. Yeah. We'll see you next time. Forward.